Aye, kuwe kuwa maduwe.
Aye, kuwe kuwa maduwe.
Aye, kuwe kuwa maduwe.
Aye, kuwe kuwa maduwe.
Could you state your name, please?
Fred Blackwell.
Fred Blackwell. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming today, Frank Blackwell. We really appreciate having you here, and this is part of the Oral History Project for the Brotherhood of Elders Network. So we're just very excited to get to speak with you and really get to hear you tell your story. So we appreciate you.
Yes.
Well, let's start off with the first question. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New York City. I was born June 19, 1938 at Harlem Hospital. I spent the first 22 years of my life in Harlem. And yeah.
Okay. What was it like growing up in Harlem?
At that time, it was just at the tail end of the Renaissance, Harlem Renaissance. And Harlem was a very exciting place to be. Black people would walk up and down the street with dressed very well. The Easter holiday was very exciting. Everybody dressed to the nines, you know. And as a kid, the stores were owned by a lot of black people. You had the occasional white store owners, but it was primarily black. I felt safe, and it was a wonderful place to grow up, frankly. I could take the bus anywhere I wanted to and play anywhere I wanted to and feel comfortable doing so.
That's good. So you got a chance to explore even outside of Harlem as you're growing up a lot.
Yes, but no, it was primarily entirely in Harlem. I would, as a kid, I was a loner primarily, you know. And I would take the bus to the Natural Museum of History and go to the planetarium, but I'd do those things on my own. I'd go to various hotels to swim, because I love to do that, particularly during the winter. But my growing up and my circumstance was primarily segregated in Harlem, with some occasional experience with white people. But for the most part, it was black.
Who or what influenced you as a child the most?
I'd say my mother and father influenced me most. They had certain expectations of me, and I honored those expectations. I was a latchkey kid at 9 years old, and so they expected me to do certain things and not bring other people into the house, and I would do that. They worked extremely hard. They were not educated people, but they appreciated the importance of education and demanded that I put the time in. And so my father owned a restaurant in Harlem on 126th Street and 8th Avenue, which is right around the corner from the Apollo Theater. And so I would see a lot of the entertainers come in and out. And my father would work extremely long hours, sometimes 36 hours in a row.
Wow.
And my mother would relieve him, but I never had much contact with them, frankly, growing up, but I saw them in their work ethic, and that had a significant impact on me.
Wow. Did you ever work at the restaurant?
I never did. They had the restaurant there from the time I was 9 till 12, and then at 12 he bought a bar in New York on 125th Street, and so I never worked in the bar, of course.
Okay.
But the same kind of work ethic and demands were always that I saw them place on themselves, led me to do the same thing for myself.
Okay. And how would you say that influenced your career path, seeing your parents not only own businesses, but really influence in terms of working hard and having education as a big part of that?
That's interesting. I translated that hard work first into playing basketball. And so I got to be pretty good at it and got a scholarship to play a ball at Wagner College in Staten Island, where I went to school. And then, in fact, I made Little Old America and got inducted into my College Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So that was part of the ethic of working hard, you know. And then I spent, after college, I went into the Army for 2 years. I was drafted, and that was like a moratorium on life. It gave me a time to think about things and what I wanted to do, and think about what opportunities I had. And so I found that I was interested in medicine. I'd always been sort of programmed to do that. My father used to call me Dr. Butch all the time. My nickname was Butch. And so then when I came out of the Army and went into medical school, I worked extremely hard. In fact, I would work during the holidays when other people would go home. I'd be in the laboratory. And I'm not sure why I'm getting emotional about this, but that hard work led me to graduate first in my class.
Wow.
Boy, this is really difficult. I'm not sure why.
It's all right. Take your time.
Yeah.
Take your time.
And after medical school, I did an internship in New York, thinking I'd want to go back to New York because that's where I grew up. But I couldn't handle New York anymore after that. After seeing so many of my buddies not make it, so then, once I got out of medical school, I went to, after the internship, rather, I went to USC for orthopedic surgery. And
so you mentioned after you began doing medical school, and you had like a short stint in the Army for a little bit. It got you a chance to think about what it is that you wanted to do with your life, and that led you to go into medicine. And you were just talking about that process, and you had just left Harlem, or just left New York after, what did you say, 22 years?
After 22 years, right.
That's right, yeah. And where'd you go after that?
Well, after that, I wound up going into the Army, and from the Army into medical school, and from medical school into internship at Brooklyn Jewish Hospital, and then USC for orthopedics. Orthopedics,
interesting. And after you went to USC for orthopedics, did you just kind of decide to stay on the West Coast, or what brought you to the Bay?
After orthopedics, I went to Tanzania, East Africa, and practiced in Dar es Salaam.
Wow.
For a year. And that was a very interesting experience. I, in fact, wanted to, I thought I might want to live in Africa permanently. But the circumstance of Tanzania was a Muslim country, and the opportunities for women were not that great. I was married at the time to Angela Blackwell, Angela Glover. It was clear that she was a very bright woman, and her opportunities there were not sufficient, I felt, for us. But I was the only orthopedist in Dar es Salaam. I went there after Julius Nyerere, the first president in Tanzania, came to the UN and spoke there and appealed to African Americans to come and help build a thing he called Ujamaa, African socialism.
Interesting.
And that's what took me there.
Interesting. So,
and then from there, I went to the Bay Area. Having trained in LA, I knew I didn't want to go back to LA. That was too much Hollywood for me. And the Panthers were hot at the time. Politically, Oakland was the place to be, and so I chose Oakland.
Excellent. Wow. So, what was that transition like, going from Tanzania to Oakland, essentially? Just it's a big jump.
The transition from Tanzania to Oakland wasn't very big, so much as going from LA to Tanzania.
Okay.
You're right. But Dar es Salaam was a very exciting place. It was full of intrigue. We had about 450 African Americans in that country at the time, and doing various things and involved politically. Tanzania was supportive to the Free Lima movement, which was in Mozambique, and the freedom movement in Angola. So it was a hot place to be.
That sounds like it. Did you get a chance to visit other countries?
Yes, I went to Kenya, spent time in Ghana, and where else did we go? Spent some time in Egypt. Nigeria.
Wow. Okay. So you got to go from a few different parts of the continent. So it's good. Yeah, just kind of east and west. So that's excellent. Well, I'm curious, because you've had that experience actually going to Africa, coming back, living there for a time, and getting to experience that, and coming back to the U.S. What does being black in America mean to you?
Boy, it means so many things. It means having a shorter life expectancy. It means having less opportunity for decent housing. It means encounters with police and all of the complications that leads to. It means black cuisine. It means gorgeous black women. It means black art, black paintings, black music. It means overcoming the odds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what it means to me.
I hear that.
It also means, I think, a certain amount of I hate to use this word, but hatred for America, for all that it's done to our people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And continues to do.
Yeah. There's certainly a lot of that.
Yeah.
Some things change, other things stay the same, unfortunately.
Exactly.
It appears like that. What are some lessons that you've learned about black society?
Oh boy, I've learned a lot about black society and society in general. I've learned that from the time that I was growing up in Harlem, it used to be that my mom and father could be away, but I'd be on the street. But there were women who lived in the building on the street that not only took care of their kids, but also looked out for me. And they had certain expectations of me. And if I did something that was terribly wrong, they'd let my folks know about it. in Harlem, there was, because of the segregation, we had a doctor living around the corner, had a funeral director living across the street. We had multiple businesses owned by Black people. And interestingly, if there was conflict, it might escalate to a fist fight. And the fist fight, depending on how aggressive somebody got, might lead to a stick being used. But the stick, if it really got serious, I mean, and I saw this rarely, would evolve into a knife being pulled. Wow. Now, virtually any transgression will lead to a gun being used. You know, yeah. So it's been very, very depressing, in fact, to see that sort of violence take place. But it is simply an expression of what America is. America is about war. Yeah. The games that I see being advertised on TV are so wrapped up in violence and conflict that I think that translates into the communities. And then the financial isolation and despair in our communities leads to intra-racial conflicts that would not ordinarily take place. Mm-hmm. You know, yeah. The lack of education and opportunity has led to that sort of thing. But America is about the business of war. And so I see that being translated into Black society. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What would you say are the top 3 things that are most harmful to the Black community?
I'd say drugs, number 1. Incarceration and police encounters, and lack of education and opportunity. Yeah. And there are many things that are intertwined in those things. Mm-hmm. You know, the drugs and the involvement with the police are inextricably intertwined in that manner. Yeah,
that's real. What do you think we can do to fix some of these large issues in the community that you mentioned?
Boy, I think, you know, foremost for me is reparations. There's no question that needs to take place. But I think that dealing with the drugs and the lack of opportunity is something that really needs to be addressed. But they play off of each other. You know, if you don't have the educational opportunity, you don't have if you don't have the educational experience mm-hmm. and the opportunity to use that education, then that leads to despair, you know. And I think certainly those things could be addressed primarily by dealing with reparations in the manner that it should be. Let me just refer to something here. Okay. Yeah. I think dealing with having sufficient preschool opportunities and education for our kids, mm-hmm. and then after-school programs and safe places for our children, because we must protect our children, are vitally important things to do. I've always been of the opinion that schools should have kids wear uniforms. I think it builds teamwork. It also takes away the anxiety of fashion. And some kids being able to dress differently than others because one parent might be better off financially.
Yeah.
And that should not be something a child should need to worry about or be concerned with.
Yeah.
It's just things like that.
I hear that. Did you wear a uniform when you were in school?
No, but you know, when we played basketball, we wore uniforms.
Right, yeah.
When we went out to games, we had jackets that were all the same. And so we felt united in that way.
I hear that. Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right about, I guess, being able to kind of dress the way you want as a kid. That leads to a whole bunch of different kind of self-esteem issues because, you know, kids will pick on each other and everything else around that. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Kids are terrible about that, I got to say. And I went to a Catholic school for a short time, so I can appreciate the uniform portion of that. So, but it was people try to find a way around that and, you know, show their individuality that way. So, what advice would you give to your younger self?
To my younger self, boy, I would say focus on critical thinking with important subjects and topics that determine what I'm going to do next. It's really vital to understand the facts around and the truth around things when you make decisions about your life and or investments or things of that nature. And then not only doing critical thinking, but the most important thing about making a decision is taking that thinking and putting it into context, the context of the time that you're in versus the time that those facts might have been developed is extremely important. Because once you have done the critical thinking and you can make your mind up about a particular matter, it doesn't matter what other people think, because you know what it is how you've come to what you've come to. So I would say that, I would say to myself that I would put greater effort into critical thinking. The next thing I would say to myself is patience, young man, and think about the consequences of what you're going to do.
Okay. All wise advice there.
And then lastly, I'd say to myself, be not the first to take the new in stride or the last to set the old aside.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm curious, how has the Brotherhood of Elders Network impacted your life?
Oh, significantly. I have such pleasure rubbing shoulders with men who look like me, who want to accomplish things together, because there's strength in numbers, and so that's how the role was played for me.
What got you interested or invested in the Brotherhood?
Actually, my wife told me about it, and then Joe Brooks called me and talked to me about it, and so I joined after that. Went to a few meetings and found that I was in tune with what they were talking about and wanted to do.
I hear that. Okay. And just ever since then, you've just been involved and you know, kind of seen it grow in a lot of different ways. I guess what was something that you noticed about the Brotherhood of Elders Network that may have been different from maybe other organizations or experiences that you've had thus far?
I think the intergenerational aspects of it are really useful. the, the, the notion that if you have something that you think is going to be useful to the community, that you can present it to the Brotherhood as something, as a project, and if you get there, go ahead. You're going to go ahead and do it, but you've got support along the way. I think that's unique, and that's something that we should be able to mine and to spread around the country, because, as Joe says, we are the best kept secret around.
No, that's an interesting point. Do you feel like the Brotherhood of Elders Network, or particularly that type of organization, is, I guess, unique, particularly since you've been in LA and just kind of other places? Have you seen similarities in terms of that type of network, or is this really kind of more like a unicorn, if you will?
You know, I'd say that one of the other things that's really unique about the Brotherhood is that we don't have we have the capacity to communicate in a nonviolent way, you know, verbally, and I think that's showing respect for each other. Although my ideas may be so far out that others would not think that they're worthwhile. Nevertheless, I've never felt that they were being disrespected in any way. And I would say just the intergenerational avenues that we travel down is something I've not seen in any other organization.
I hear that.
The breadth of experience and the broad scope of influence that we have, because we come from so many other disciplines, is something that is extraordinary when used.
I hear that. And just speaking to that, your discipline, just knowing so much about medicine and being in that field, how do you feel like that impacted or just kind of swayed once you got involved with the organization? Now, just having that
Not
knowledge.
much. I've not done much in the way of medical with the group. I am chairman of the technology committee, and that's purely apart from anything I'm used to. But it's been a lot of fun and work to get it going where it needed to go to. But I think that it was real fun doing it, though. You know, the work wasn't work; it was fun.
Yeah, I hear that. No, that's the best part, when work doesn't feel like work.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're getting close to the end, but I wanted to know, what is some wisdom you think younger generations need, or they need to hear?
I struggled with that one, with that question. I think they need to know that this time is their time. This movement is their movement, and that we as elders want to get out of their way. That we're here to help if they want it, and give advice if they feel they need it. But not to try and command or determine the direction it should go in. The Black Lives Movement is a movement that belongs to the younger Black generation of African descent. I would say to them that we of the Civil Rights Movement dropped the ball. That we did not appreciate the determination and dedication the white racists had to subvert what we accomplished. We did not remember the lessons of Reconstruction. Too many generations passed between that time to remember how formidable that force, that white racist force is. And that they not drop the ball like we did.
Mm. Hear that? Okay. You can take a sec.
And I guess lastly, I'd say do not criticize my generation for not being black enough or radical enough, because that serves no useful purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that as we are, they will one day be.
It's true, yeah. With Lord willing, just getting that opportunity to be an elder and to have that chance to look back and just kind of have that wisdom of, and you know, hindsight is always 20/20 for these things too. So,
yeah.
You know, and seeing how all these other aspects of life that you know impact, whether it's a black movement or just kind of the overall direction of society. Like, you know, there's so many other factors that are at play for that, and
yeah.
And just one of the things that's I heard you mention just about even, you know, feeling like people drop the ball and things. The question was, what does liberation mean to you in 2021? Has that changed over the years for you, or do you feel like you have kind of the same feeling as you had before? I guess around that.
It hasn't changed since I learned the importance of the right to vote. And that liberation is the right to vote and have it counted. Liberation to me is equity of education and opportunity.
I hear that. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up, and or anything you'd like to cover that you may not have gotten to?
I would say that one of the things that is so painful to see is the dissolution of the black family, generally speaking. Mm. The drugs and crime and lack of opportunity has led to the mass incarceration that this country practices on us. It's broken up the family. And the family is so important because I think it is a big determinant in success or failure. That when a family is dysfunctional, it's very likely that the offspring will be dysfunctional as well. Yeah. That's not always true. Mm-hmm. There are many people who have been able to accomplish amazing things coming from broken families. Mm-hmm. But it is so much harder to overcome. Yeah. So that's one of the things I hate about America, you know, that it is what it's done to our community and the impact it's had on the black family. So equity of education and opportunity will lead to people being able to have better jobs and be able to think critically. And again, have families, nuclear families.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear that. Well, Mr. Blackwell, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate the time that you've taken and just left us some really powerful words of wisdom and advice. So we really appreciate you coming out today.
I'm sorry for all the emotions.
Oh, no, please, no, by all means. Yeah. It's, anytime anyone is, I guess, emotional about, you know, a question or something like that, it really kind of speaks to how much they thought about it or how much it's impacted them. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that with our audience. It really means a lot. It means a lot.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.